Greetings everybody, and welcome to DeGrand's top 10 list for the best boons in the game, in my book. Now, before we get started, here's a little bit of a small mindset that I had when I created this list. I was looking at the game, I was looking at all the gods that are able to give us stuff, and wanted to compile a list of god boons that I consider to be helpful on almost every given run, in almost every situation that you can get it in without having any bigger kind of prerequisition that you need to fulfill in order to get it. So these are boons that you can see at almost any time in the game when they are being offered to you by a certain god, and they should be in a position where they will always enhance the run you have got going on, no matter what you try to accomplish overall. So with all that being said, let's get it started. And the first choice may be a little bit of a surprise for some. It's actually a chaos boon, and it's probably not the boon you expect. The boon I'm talking about is affluence. Any obols you find is worth 40% more. Of course, this one scales with rarity. And this may be a bit weird for you, because Chaos, of course, has a lot of great boons. You see the legendaries being listed in here as well. The thing is that I do consider a lot of his boons very, very powerful, but they are also very, very situational. For example, you got stronger cast damage coming from him over here, which is good if you got a cast run. You see stronger special damage, which is good if you want to have your run be special heavy. But that's not always the case. What is always the case is that you always want to earn and spend money, and that is where affluence comes in. Now, I was not quite sure if I wanted to pick Affluence here or Hermes' side hustle, because ultimately they do the same. One gives you more money, the other one gives you also more money. The main difference here is that I think that Affluence just tends to give you more money over the course of an entire run, and you can get Affluence at a point in time where it is not detrimental. Hermes can end up giving you his side hustle at the very end of the game when you buy his boon for 500 coins, or in general when you spend money on getting that Hermes boon, which kind of diminishes its value. But Affluence, you can get it, in most cases you will get it at the latest in Elysium, and even if you get it there, it will still be useful for you in Styx, because the gold income in Styx is usually very, very high. And the amount of gold you will in turn earn you a lot of power coming from God Booms, Centaur Hearts, or Palms of Power that you buy from Karus' shop, or even from his wells. So Affluence, when in doubt, take it, because that extra money will always be useful for you in the long run. Now, for the next boon in my list, you heard me speak about Hermes, and he's actually the next one on the list. And it's a boon that I personally did not really like all that much when I first encountered it. It had a different name back then. But nowadays, I've learned to mega love it. And that boon is Hyper Sprint. After you dash, briefly become sturdy and move 100% faster. The sprint duration scales, of course, with rarity. I think the highest it can get these days is 0.7 seconds. This is a boon I think many people overlook by a great deal. That extra movement speed, it is very, very good just in terms of helping you reposition yourself in a heated situation. And trust me, fights can get very, very heated in the long run. But that sturdy effect, it is free damage mitigation. 30% free damage mitigation you get for free just by virtue of the fact that you use the most commonly used game mechanic in the game, dashing. Dashing is probably the single one action you spend most of your time doing. And getting 30% free damage mitigation on top of that, on top of everything else you can do with your dash, on top of that movement speed, is so much value packed into one boon that will in almost any situation be worth your while. Hyper Sprint is an absolute hero in my book, and definitely worth your consideration. Now, for the next boon, it is a very, very good boon that I personally love to use a lot, and we are looking at Athena here. And the boon we are looking for is the Phalanx Shot. Phalanx Shot, probably not a boon a lot of you people saw coming, but here's the thing. In my book, Phalanx Shot is the single best cast in the game by default. Of course, you know, you got your trippy shots from Dionysus, which have the potential to become some of the strongest synergies in the game, but they need a lot of development for that. And Phalanx Shot offers you a lot of power, a lot of utility, just with this one single boon. It increases your damage a little bit, as you can see, of course scaling with rarity as well. But it also offers you the ability to get deflects. And deflects are one of the strongest mechanics in the game. And let me paint you a picture, and you will hear that metaphor coming in one of my videos as well. Imagine being in a gunfight. Imagine you are in a duel, you have a gun, the enemy has a gun, and you both fire at the same time. There is a good chance that both of you will get hit, or one of you draws faster and the other one dies. Now imagine that you hold a gun that not only negates the enemy's gun, but makes his own bully hit himself. Bully, yeah, his own bullet. That is Phalanx Shot. And the goodness of Phalanx Shot doesn't stop there. It has also a very, very strong homing effect. It makes your bullet bigger, and it also gives your bullet AoE properties. So not only do you turn your gun into a gun that negates the enemy gun, it is also more or less a grenade launcher that hits multiple enemies for more damage, and has the potential of getting some of the best additional boons in the game. We are looking at, where is it? Blinding Flash, which is a debuff, and a very, very strong debuff for many weapons in the game. You look at Brilliant Repose, which just busts the entire deflect mechanic open even more, especially against some of the later bosses. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And, of course, by default, you can also end up getting the Legendary on top of it. And it also serves as a prerequisite for some of the best duo boons in the game. Most notably here, the Deadly Reversal, of course. This one cast can give you a lot. Phalanx Shot, by itself, but also by extension, is a very, very strong cast. And it works famously for the cast-heavy weapons in the game too. Achilles aspect, Poseidon aspect, you name it, Phalanx Shot is going to make it. And that is a dead Aeon promise right there. You take Phalanx Shot, you will never regret it. Now, for number 7 on the list. Number 7 on the list is this boon from Hermes over here. And we are looking at Quick Recovery. See, there's a lot of damage being thrown at you, especially if you go into the later stages of the game. Even more so if you dive deeper into higher heated runs. Quick Recovery, it actually has been buffed for one of the last patches. It goes from 30 to 50% of the damage taken being returned to you if you dash immediately after taking that damage. And that can actually end up returning you a lot of the damage. Well, no, it doesn't return the damage. It does return a lot of the HP you have lost back to you. Just imagine, you can effectively cut enemy damage in half just by dashing out of it right after taking it. And that is remarkably powerful. We have seen some instances where Hades was hitting me for over 100 damage, and just being able to replenish half of that in a heartbeat. It is so powerful. It is always useful. Unless you're playing at the very, very highest levels of competence, where you can say that you clean out a run without getting hit all that much, if at all. Quick Recovery is going to always be a great helper for you. Again, dashes are the one actions in the game that you do the most, but they will not always save you. But in the case where a dash did not save you, Quick Recovery will make it so that the damage is being mitigated somewhat fiercely. It is very, very powerful. I don't know if they patched that recently, but apparently this healing will still apply even if the healing is negated by your Pact of Punishment, making it even useful for super high heated runs. So keep that in mind. We have to go deeper into the research if that is still possible. I haven't seen it yet. But if it is, that just cements Quick Recovery as one of the greatest boons in the game in my book. Now, number 6 on the list is actually 2 boons. But they ultimately do the same. And those boons are Heartbreak Strike and Heartbreak Flourish from Aphrodite. I have a lot of love for both of these because they are giving your boons, they give you quite a hefty amount of damage. Heartbreak Flourish, for example, is actually one of the highest special multipliers in the game. So that all by itself is good. But they also give you a debuff immediately, which is of course great for making your privileged status online for even more damage potential in your run. But let us talk about the debuff itself. Weakening effect causes your enemies to deal 30% less damage against you. That is a lot, and we have already discussed how some enemies in the game can just absolutely destroy you silly. So cutting 30% off of that is great, is very, very useful, and you get that effect for 3 seconds, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you have it on your attack or your special, it is kind of context depending on the weapon you're looking at, right? If you got a sword, unless you're playing Poseidon spec, you're always going to use your attack, so having a strong attack is going to be good. Sometimes you may go for a special every run, and then having the Aphrodite special is also going to be great. The spear, you can do a lot of fun things with both the Aphrodite boons, with the spear in all kinds of configurations. The same goes for the shield. The bow is a very fun example because let's go with Rama, for example. You can either use it for the strong attack, or you can use it on your special just to get the debuff on as many enemies as possible before you take the shot, having a debuff on the enemy to even benefit more from everything you do and represent. Guan Yu. The fists over here, I wanted to say gauntlets. Same case as I just stated. Use it on your special, use it on your attack. Doesn't matter what aspect you use, but you will get some kind of usage out of it. It doesn't even matter all that much if you got a very, very strong or a very, very weak but fast-firing attack like the rail. Because even if you do it like this, you still get the debuff on your target, and you also have the potential to get some of the best passives out of Aphrodite to just double down on all of that. Like, you can get the empty inside, so you don't have to do it all that often. You can get the broken resolve to get the damage reduction even higher. You can get Sweet Surrender to just add even more damage on everything else you already do and represent. And of course, Unhealthy Fixation is hilarious just for being able to break the game wide open. And by virtue of the fact that it's an Aphrodite boon, you also enable yourself to get some of the greatest or more useful duo boons in the game. Parting Shot, for example, is great. Low tolerance with Dionysus, hard range for stronger crits. Curse of Longing, I personally like it just because I don't need to reapply Doom all that often. Sweet Nectar. Palms of Power can be useful especially early on, and if you get even more out of that, who would I be to say no to that? Smoldering Air, of course, one of my personal favorites of all time. Those do a lot for you. Now, there's I wanted to actually put the dash into this spot, because I think the Aphrodite dash is very, very useful. At least it was very, very useful, but it has been nerfed multiple times and is now a shadow of its former self. It used to be one of the greatest boons in the game. Now, it is not that good, to the point where these two overshadowed it somewhat fiercely. But these two, you're picking up, they will do good work for you. That is a DeGrand promise right there. Now, we are getting to the spicy part of the list. Spot number 5 goes to a boon you probably expected to see on the list if you have ever followed any of my videos thus far, and it is Snowburst. I think I have discussed a lot of times in the past why I consider Snowburst to be one of the greatest boons in the game. It adds extra damage, and quite a lot of extra damage, 40 to 60 depending on rarity, to your cast. It adds a debuff for privileged status on top of your cast, and it does all of that without actually being a cast boon. So you can have, for example, the Snowburst, while also still having Athena's Phalanx Shot on top of it, which we already mentioned before. And you just reap all the benefits without sacrificing any kind of spot you might want to save for something else. And because the goodness doesn't stop there, not Dionysus, I want a Demeter. Because the goodness doesn't stop there, Snowburst also allows you to get some of the stronger passives that she got going for her. One of my favorites, of course, being the Killing Freeze, which makes enemies even slower while also adding even more damage to your run. It's very, very good. It is very, very strong just by virtue of being there. And you may say not every run is a cast run, right? So Snowburst may not be that useful for that cause, and you may say the same about Phalanx Shot. But here's the thing, you always want to use your cast at least on your occasion, because you do want to put that cast onto your enemies so you get the extra damage off. So, if you're going to do it anyway, you might as well do it even better than you would have otherwise, right? That is why I value Snowburst so much. It is one of the boons in the game I take the most, and I do intend to take it a lot in the future as well. Now, moving on to spot number 4. We're going back to Hermes, and you probably expected this boon to be in here as well. Greatest Reflex. I have gone on and on about how good dashes are in this game. And thusly it comes to no surprise that getting more dashes is going to be good for you. Having more dashes means that you will deal more damage with your dashes, you're gonna be more mobile, you will mitigate more damage just by virtue of not being there when the enemies try to attack you. And if you go for super high heated runs, of course, and I'm talking about the highest heated runs, you will see a common theme of Greatest Reflex being a constant that needs to be there for almost all clears. Greatest Reflex is an absolute run winner of the highest echelon, while always being useful on every other stage of the game you're looking at. Greatest Reflex is huge because it enhances the main mechanic, the most important mechanic in the entire game. I can't stress enough how good Greatest Reflex is. But DeGrand, if Greatest Reflex is so good, why is it only at spot number 4? I'll get to that. I will, in a moment. I will get to that in a moment. Just for the moment, appreciate the greatness of Greatest Reflex for what it is. Spot number 3. And I would be surprised if you did not see that one coming, because it's one of the boons that makes me the most excited every time I see it. And that is Premium Vintage. Premium Vintage, it is a boon that is always useful. No matter the stage you get it, it is always going to be good. It excels if you get it as early as possible, of course. You get extra HP 20 to 25 or even 30 on epic rarity, while also getting a free bottle of nectar, which is huge. I feel like Premium Vintage is one of those boons that is just useful in every situation. First of all, imagine you're just starting the game. It means you get a free bottle of nectar, which comes somewhat scarcely at you in the early game. So you want those bottles. This boon can end up giving you a huge chunk of HP. It can start and stop at 20. It can just as easily go all the way up to 90 to 120 if you're on a particularly lucky run. And that immediate free level up, especially if you get it early, will just enhance your run even more. Premium Vintage is all about the value it gives you. And no matter the stage of the game, the value will be there and it will be good. Just say you get 25 HP and 1 random rank out of power of it. That's worth 225 obols all by itself. And that will just escalate higher and higher the more you can mill it. I had it on some of my most hard run and ended up helping a great deal. And you notice how much it will help you. It also just allows you to, just say no to centaurs here and there in order to pursue something else, like a God boon, if you feel like you have already stacked up enough survivability. Premium Vintage just makes your entire game state safer and more stable. And for that, it should never, ever be overlooked. Premium Vintage, it is a more subtle hero, but one of the greatest heroes overall. And again, that goes for all levels of feat. Those extra HP, especially on high heated runs, will be useful because you probably end up using Stubborn Defiances, and those of course become infinitely better the more base HP you have. Now, we are getting to the spicy spots in here. This next boon, it's actually going to be a Poseidon boon. I bet nobody saw that coming. But it is a boon I always liked, until for that small position where it was bugged. Poseidon's Aid. Poseidon's Aid. What can I say about Poseidon's Aid that I haven't said before? It deals great damage. We're talking about 250 impact damage on the lowest rarity. That easily goes up to 350 on epic rarity, while also scaling very, very good with Palms of Power. And while you get that damage, it also makes you completely impervious for 1.2 seconds, while also allowing you to reposition yourself on the map, because it allows you to just move very, very quickly. There was a small time period in the past, and I say small, but it was actually pretty big, where this boon was bugged as hell. Talking about before the Blood Price update here. That was the only time where this boon was honest to God bad. But in every other situation, it was good. The damage, good. The survivability it adds up to your run, absolutely stellar. And to make it even better, there are some good passes that you can get on top of it that makes it just all the more better. Boiling Point or any boon that gives you more wrath charges, of course, just will end up increasing to your safety. Say, for example, you got to go on your run, you don't have naturally high HP in the first place, which is a problem. Getting it once will usually end up giving you a Poseidon's Aid charge, which will help you get into safety. Or end up finishing off your enemy in relative safety. Boiling Point will just increase that somewhat fiercely. And then, of course, there's one of my favorite boons in the game, Rip Current, which just makes it last even longer while making it all the more dangerous for your enemies by just absorbing them in and then knocking them out somewhat fiercely. I don't know when this video goes out, but there's a good chance that you will see me use Poseidon's Aid a lot against a certain very, very high boss and strong boss fight. And trust me, this boon over here will end up making and breaking a lot of runs. You don't need anything else. You don't need Boiling Point, you don't need Rip Current to make this one good. You don't need his debuff or, what is it, Typhon's Fury or Breaking Wave, any like that. You don't need them. It will be good as a standalone boon. You can meet Poseidon once, get this Wrath effect out of him. It will keep you afloat forever. That is how good it is. And there is no other Wrath effect in the game that gives you as much value as this. Dionysus and Demeter probably come close because they are both very, very strong as well, while giving you also a debuff for privileged status, which is very, very powerful in my book. And of course Demeter's 8 also making enemies slower, but all of that pales in comparison to the sheer potency of Poseidon's 8. Easily on the number 2 spot. Now for the number 1 spot, and I think you all saw this one coming. We have already discussed to great lengths how powerful deflects are, and there is, in my book, next to no generally useful deflecting boon than the Divine Dash. We have covered to great lengths how dashes are the most important mechanics in the game. We have covered how strong deflects are in this game. What happens if you bring both of them together? You got an honest-to-God game-winning boon. Divine Dash is strong, for reasons we have already discussed when we were talking about Phalanx Shot. And it is even stronger than this, because you are going to do it all the time. You try to dodge an enemy, well, instead of just dodging out the damage, you throw it back at your enemy. What's not to love about that? The dash damage itself is weak, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Again, the damage you will get is great. The added potential you can get from further Athena boons is great. The duo boons you can get thanks to this are great. Everything about Divine Dash is huge and can contribute to becoming an honest-to-God huge game winner for you. You see Divine Dash, unless Athena's offering anything else that you want more at this point in time to advance your game state, you can never, ever go wrong with Divine Dash. So, that is the list. Number 10, Chaos Affluence for huge money games. Number 9, Hyper Sprint from Hermes for even more mobility and damage mitigation. Phalanx Shot because it makes one of your core mechanics better and safer. Quick Recovery, again, Dash goodness, helps you mitigate damage. Heartbreak Flag and Flourish Strike, strong and utility heavy. Snowburst, making your cards better without taking any spots away from anything. Greatest Reflex because dashes are great. Premium Vintage because HP and power-ups are great. Poseidon's 8 because 8s are great and it is the greatest 8 that can aid you in your conquest. And Divine Dash because it is the single best boon in the entire game. On many levels, on all skill levels. And that was the list. I actually ended up talking a bit more about all of this, but I hope you did enjoy this. If you got any questions about the boons in question or how I valued them, especially regarding the early mindset I was stating, let me know about the comments below. If you want to see more guides like this, or more top 10 lists, or top 5 lists for that matter, because they are a bit easier to make, let me know about that in the comments below. Because I gotta say, it's pretty nice to do that. And I think that now being able to see all the boons here in the codex is going to be a great help just showing off how they are. Like, I was talking about the most basic of them. If I were to say, for example, make a top 10 boost for the duo boons, it would be great to let you guys see what kind of boons you would need to get as a prerequisite for that in the future. But yeah, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. I hope this list was helpful for you, and I will see you all in the next video. But until then, have the greatest of days, and please stay as awesome as you are.